What is up, everybody? Episode number 600 of Get Paid for Your Pad. Special, very special occasion, of course, and who better to invite than my partner in crime, Mr. Eric Moeller. Eric, welcome to episode 600, dude.
600 episodes, man. That's a lot. That's a lot.
It is a lot, isn't it?
That's a lot of talking. That's a lot of guests. It's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, no, right? It's super exciting. It's almost been 10 years, so it's another big milestone that's coming up on the podcast here.
That's awesome, man. You're almost catching up to Rogan.
Joe Rogan, yeah. I don't know. He's got probably like he must be at 2,000 by now.
I think it's like 3,000. Yeah.
Oh, really?
You gotta step it up, man.
Does he do one every day?
Yeah, sometimes he does multiple a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was dreaming a couple of days ago. I was dreaming that I was doing a daily Get Paid for Your Pad podcast.
Hey, man, it might be a sign, the universe is trying to nudge you that way.
Maybe one day I'll do that. That's the only thing I'll do. I'll just get up in the morning, record a podcast, and then I'll just chill for the rest of the day.
There you go, man.
Sounds pretty good, actually.
Yeah, when you're fat and retired sitting on the beach, do a daily podcast.
Exactly. Awesome, man. Well, you kind of inspired me. I think it was last week. You posted something on LinkedIn, and by the way, you've been very active on LinkedIn. Like, what's what's going on LinkedIn? Huh? I see you writing stuff. I see you posting.
Dude, I feel like a whole new surgence again in like creative flow, and now that Free Wild is live, and we're getting the feedback, and this again, like this vision of Free Wild came to me originally like hiking on a mountain, and then fast forward years later, this thing is real, and like we're hosting guests and making money doing our thing. It's freaking awesome. The feedback that we're getting is awesome. So yeah, it's just been inspiring me to write more and create more content. Been doing a lot more podcasts, stuff like that. Specifically around hospitality and just kind of my vision of what's happening in the short-term rental industry. But yeah, I found LinkedIn is really the best for me. That's the best channel to create. I had outside of Free Wild on Instagram, like Instagram's not my thing. Posting pictures of myself doing things, like it's just not my thing. Facebook, I haven't been on there in forever. Sure as hell not downloading TikTok. So I just found like my little niche in LinkedIn, and the writing has just been a lot of fun as well. So trying to post a few posts a week right now, and then the goal is to eventually get up to like a daily post, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, one of your posts caught my eye. It was a post about a concept that I'd never heard about called Unreasonable Hospitality. Mm-hmm. That really piqued my interest, so I'd love for you to explain what that means.
Well, Unreasonable Hospitality, for everyone who's looking, it's this book right here. I actually finished it today. It's by Will Gierda. I probably butchered his last name. But he is, I've been really into studying hospitality and trying to understand, like with Free Wild, how do we create not just the product as far as like design and experience, design and service wise, for the property, but how do we develop a world-class hospitality experience for our guests that go through this property that they have to come back and experience another Free Wild. They have to share Free Wild with a friend, right? Like after going to an incredible restaurant or going to an awesome movie, people are sharing it with their friends, right? So I've been studying quite a bit of hospitality from restaurateurs, and just the restaurant industry itself. And there's two really amazing books, and I highly recommend everyone who's listening to this to buy or download both of these books and read them in this process. So the first book is called Setting the Table by Danny Meyer, famous restaurant owner, owns multiple different restaurants. But his first restaurant was 11 Medicine Park in New York City. Was world-class restaurant. Eventually, he sold it to Will, which was one of his employees at the restaurant. And Will wrote this book, Unreasonable Hospitality. And over the course of 20 years, they were able to get this restaurant to become the number one restaurant in the world, along with being, rated 4 stars in New York Times, and also being a 3-star Michelin star restaurant. So he wrote this book called Unreasonable Hospitality. We're actually going to be down. He's headlining the Dharma event down in Nashville in December. So hopefully we'll get to meet him while he's down there as well. But he created this concept called Unreasonable Hospitality, and the whole idea behind it is, how do you go above and beyond for your guests, to where it's just completely unreasonable what you're doing to make this person's experience world class. And he has so many different stories about that in the book that we can break down. But he even created a position in his restaurant to over deliver for guests and just focus on the guest experience, right? So I started writing about Unreasonable Hospitality because this book really resonated with me. If you go through my book here, it's just like covered with notes and highlights and all kinds of stuff. So much so that the Unreasonable Hospitality is now a core value of Free Wild, right? Of like, okay, this is part of our culture and community, to create something to where our guests are just completely blown away with the hospitality. I'm not talking about the service and the property. I'm talking about the human connection behind the stay. So yeah, I started writing about it because I feel that the short-term industry, is leading towards hospitality being the factor of success for short-term rental stays and hosts. So we can unpack all that, but yeah, that's where the inspiration came from, is this book on Unreasonable Hospitality.
Unreasonable Hospitality. Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm definitely going to order the book. Next week is Thanksgiving, so I'm going to disconnect for a couple of days, and that'll be my goal to finish that book during the holiday.
Yeah, I highly recommend diving into it, man. Also by Setting the Table, because then it'll kind of give you a story of how 11 Medicine Park was created, and a little bit more about the history of that, because he references Danny Meyer quite a bit. But what Will has done here with Unreasonable Hospitality, and this is a fairly new book. I forget when it came out, a couple years ago. But I truly believe that he's going to be creating a whole movement here around unreasonable hospitality. And my hopes are, this was written back in 2022, so not that long ago. My hopes here is that we are the ones that really put these lessons to work inside of Free Wild, and really set the standard of what's possible in short-term rentals.
Yeah. I was checking out the website for this book. There's a whole website, unreasonablehospitality.com. And it's funny because the first sentence that I read here is, if you're here, it means that you believe, as we do, that how we serve is as valuable as what we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And that line like resonated with me, because I remember when I was very, very young, my teacher taught me a really important lesson. Basically, I think I was like 8 years old, or maybe 9 years old or something. And I got into a bit of a fight with my teacher, and I yelled something at him, and he was, I said something that I shouldn't have said. I was being rude to him, right? And then so I had to stay after class, and then I was trying to get away with it by saying that it was a joke, right? That I didn't mean it. And he then told me in an expression, actually in French. So for anybody who speaks French who's listening to this, you might understand it. I'll translate it, but it goes, c'est le ton qui fait la musique, which basically means it's the tongue that creates the music. And what it means is that it's not the words that are coming out of our mouth, that has the meaning. It's the meaning comes more from like the context and the way that we say it. And that's what I was thinking about when I was reading this. I was like, that makes a little sense to me. It's like, it's not necessarily about what we say or what we serve. It's about how we serve it or how we say it.
Yeah, this is what I find really interesting with Unreasonable Hospitality, and where I think the biggest challenge is going to be from implementing this in short-term rentals. Like, one thing that Will did, he talks about this in the book, that they created is something between the back of the house and the front of the house, right? Like the chef essentially, and then the servers, where he put a lot of power and a lot of effort into the servers being the ones that really create the experience for the guests that are eating, right? And previous to this, essentially, restaurants were only focused about the amazing chef in the back and what he or she really wanted the experience to be. This is the first time that a restaurant had two experiences, the food and then the service, right? And what Will, excuse me, what Will gave his servers the power to do is to authentically connect with the guests, right? So he gave them the power to authentically connect and help shape an experience with every single guest that comes into the restaurant, right? Which I think is really amazing, because it's like he was able to attract in people that truly wanted to create hospitable experiences and authentically connect with the humans that they're serving, versus just taking an order and just being being somebody that runs food back and forth, right? So for us, in the short-term rental space, like, this is something that I see. It's like, how do we create these experiences and have these authentic connections with our guests that are coming into our properties, with still holding what we love short-term rentals to be, which is like this automated experience to a certain level. Does that make sense? Like, how are we going to be able to over deliver these experiences and create these experiences for our guests that are unique, that is not fully automated?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like sometimes the two can actually go hand in hand.
Sure.
Because when I book an Airbnb, there's nothing that I love more than an instant message with the information that I need in that moment, right? And so I don't mind if somebody that message is automated. I know it's not the host typing out that message, but I'm getting what I need in that moment, what I want in that moment, right?
Right. Yeah, I think again, we have a service side, we have the hospitality side. And I think the service side, automated messages, all of that is important for sure. Like, I think, and that's what I love. I don't necessarily want to meet my host when I go to check in, right? But with Unreasonable Hospitality, one thing that I'm challenging us on as a company to look at, and like what I'm challenging the industry to look at, is like, how do we create those experiences, right? Like, how do we create experiences that are that human connection with our guests in our properties, right? So I don't necessarily have the answers for that now. We're playing with this now in Free Wilds, but what I'm excited about is like the ability to attract in people into the company that will help cultivate those experiences that truly want to have those human connections with the guests that are coming through.
Actually, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on how do we implement that? But you already answered that question. My next question is, do you think this is something? Do you think this is a new concept that people are looking more for experiences versus the product itself? Like, we're not looking for a space, we're not looking for, food. We're looking for that experience, whether it's the restaurant or whether it's like going to the cinema. Like, it's not just about the movie, it's about, everything else. Like, is that something new, or do you think that has existed always in the history of humankind?
I mean, I don't know. I think humans are always looking for experiences that they can connect with. Experiences equal stories, right? And humans, as we know, evolve through storytelling, right? And we connect through storytelling, right? So just a place to stay. I don't tell, like, for example, I went to New Jersey about a month ago to visit some family, and I was only there for 2 nights. So I rented a standard hotel room that I found on booking.com. And everything about that property, the location, the company, the people I dealt with, it was forgettable. Like it was, I don't, I don't even know the name of the hotel, but what I do remember was my experience of the hotel being it was just a very bad experience. I had to move to 3 different rooms. It was smelly. It was dirty. It was bad. It was a bad experience. But I tell this story of that experience to my family that's in that area, right? Obviously, that's a bad example of what not to do, or a good example of what not to do, right? But I think the what humans are experiencing, or what they're seeking now, at least for myself, what we're seeking now are experiences that we can create memories and tell stories about, right? So it's like we still want the standards when it comes to short-term rentals. We still want the standards of a clean property, comfortable beds, safe location, beautiful designs, easy access, easy stay, all of that. But I think we're also seeking this hospitality experience that we can continue to share and share our memories about that, right? It's not We're not just, of course there's always going to be people looking for the cheapest place to stay, but even there, like that could be you can bring unreasonable hospitality to any level of experience, any stay, from the budget to the most luxurious. It's not, it's not 5-star stays that need unreasonable hospitality. It's every single short-term rental. So I don't know. I think people are just seeking more lively experiences that that create memories that they can share.
Yeah, I think I remember when my grandmother once told me that she was 36 when she went on her first vacation.
Mm.
And it made me think. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Cuz like imagine that you're one of the first people to travel to space, right? To the moon or something like that. You have that I think that's a service now, right? Where you can jump in a
I
spaceship.
think so. Yeah.
Not the moon, but like you can go in space,
Space.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking like imagine that you go on a space flight, right? You're probably not gonna worry about like how comfortable the chair is, and because the experience is like so new and so cool, right? And I'm thinking when my grandmother told me that, I was like, like back in the day when going on vacation on the first place was a very unique and luxurious kind of experience that not many people were able to do. So I'm thinking like as we as society evolves and like we're able to do, going on vacation is almost like standard. Like everyone goes on vacation a couple times a year, right? So once it becomes like kind of like you take it for granted that you do it, then you start. I feel like then we start focusing more on like the experience versus just the thing itself. Same with like going out for dinner. It's like
Yep.
that used to be also like a luxury thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, our industry has matured. Our industry has seasoned, right? So I shared this on another post on LinkedIn that I did prior to Unreasonable Hospitality post. Um, is that our industry has seasoned to a point where people have gone through. In the beginning, when Airbnb launched, we went through a few years of just like being in awe that we can stay in any property we want in any town in any city around the world, right? It's like we didn't have that option before. It was very touristy where we we're going. Excuse me. now with Airbnb, we're able to stay in like apartment buildings and random homes and stuff like this. Like just that experience alone is incredible, right? So to your point, just that alone was an incredible experience. But we've done it. We've stayed there. We've gone through all the, especially for the people that truly travel a lot and stay at multiple Airbnbs. We've experienced terrible Airbnbs, right? It's like, and we've experienced subpar short-term rentals where it's just like it's like going to a restaurant where the food is just like super disappointing, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm fed, right? But I'm never coming back here again, right? We've had more of those experiences for the most part as a travel community than the place of walking in just being completely in awe of the experience, right? So I think people are truly seeking that now because we know it's possible. Also, I think it's, I think people are with TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, we see that these places are out there and that it's possible to stay at these awesome homes, right? And I think people want more of that, right? So yeah, I think everything this is just a maturity, but there's still at the end of the day, like it comes down to creating experiences, whatever that experience is, creating a world class service, but then creating unreasonable hospitality, world class hospitality.
Yeah, I remember when I stayed at my very first Airbnb back in 2011. My expectation was so low. Like I was like, if this is a scam and I just lost my money, then I probably wouldn't be very upset because I'm kind of attaching like a 40% chance to that happening. So the fact that the host opened the door, that was already a win,
Right.
So that's how low my expectations were.
For sure. Yeah, dude, I remember staying even before Airbnb. I was staying on couchsurfing.net, right? And just like sleeping on people's, couches and blow up mattresses for free, right? So like the industry has definitely evolved. Now, I think going into 2024 and the next few years, what I think is like if you want to be successful in short-term rentals, if you want to build a real short-term rental company, like we got to lead with hospitality first. I really believe that we got to lead with a boutique brand. We got to focus on a great product, great service, but then we also have to lead with real hospitality. And I think those elements is going to make something that will be sustainably wealthy throughout the years.
So we were at VRMA a couple of weeks ago. What are your thoughts on like the general vibe there? Do you feel like a lot of people that were at the conference like are on the same page with the stuff, or do you think most people are still kind of in that mindset of like renting out a space?
I mean, I think there's always going to be people that are always, looking to rent out a space, and people are always looking to just rent a space, right? Just like how I rented that crappy hotel room. I just needed a place to lay my bags, take a shower, and go to sleep, right? It's like I just needed that. So that's always going to be there. But as I share as I share the brand, like my vision around like how hospitality brands, short-term rental brands are the future of short-term rental industries and how hospitality needs to be the number one thing that we focus on. I mean, I get more and more people that are agreeing with me than disagreeing. I haven't had anybody recently disagree saying, nah, you can still just get away with, cookie cutter properties or whatever you want to call them. So I do see a shift. I see a lot more property, like really unique branded properties pop up, which is really cool. So yeah, I definitely see the maturity of the industry. So I don't see. I don't think we're an outlier. I think more and more people are going to be leading this way with their short-term rental brands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that place that you stay in New Jersey. I had a similar experience in Orlando. The night we arrived the day early. My wife's family lives in Orlando, and we just booked a hotel that was closest to their home, just so we could meet with family and have dinner and everything, right? And I can't remember the name of the hotel. It was definitely a well-known brand, but it's one of those like more low budget type of brands. Anyway, like we walked into our room and the bathtub, like the water was flowing. You know, you couldn't shut it off. It was just like there was a constant stream of water coming out, and so. But we had to go. We had dinner, you know, like so we had to go immediately. So I rolled up to the reception and I told the people like, hey, listen, like we got to roll for dinner, but I just want to let you guys know, like the water is leaking in the bathtub in our room. So if you guys can maybe, you know, go over and fix it, or, you know, put us in a different room, whatever it is, we'll be back in 2 hours. And then to my great surprise, the person behind the counter said, well, is it bothering you? Like, do you hear it when you're in the bedroom? Like, and I was like, well, no, I don't think so. It doesn't make like a little noise or anything, but I mean, like, I mean, it's your hotel. Like, I'm sure you don't really want the water to be running all night, right? Isn't that is a bit of a waste? Like, and she was like, well, if it doesn't bother you, then, you know, don't worry about it. Like, we'll, you know, because, you know, we don't have the maintenance person here, and like, you know, we'll fix it another time. And I was just like, man, like, that's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, like, this is the one thing, like, once you enter into hospitality, especially unreasonable hospitality, like, for example, we're going right after this, we're going to dinner at one of my favorite restaurants called Campfire in Carlsbad, California. And they're part of a restaurant group where right next door they have another restaurant called Jean Joulet, which is a Michelin star restaurant. And actually, the director of operations gave me this book. We were chatting about Free Wild, and he came down and he said, "Hey, read this book. I make everyone who I hire read it, and it's, you know, it's a big inspiration behind behind this company, behind these restaurants." The reason why I bring this up to your story is, like, once you start entering into world class hospitality, like those restaurants that we're going to, is just by far the best service and the best hospitality I've ever experienced, right? And I've been in a lot of restaurants. Same thing with hotels. Like, I was just down in Austin and I stayed at this hotel called the Lauren on Lady Lake down in Austin, Texas. And same thing, the hospitality, as soon as you walk in, the hospitality is incredible. Design's beautiful, all of that. But the people truly want to connect with you and serve you there, right? So when you walk in and you have those types of experiences where it's like, oh, well, can't help you, you know, or whatever it is, like, you know, the hotel I was at, there was a bad smell in one of the rooms that they put me in. So I came back down and he's like, oh, yeah, I could just put an air freshener in there for you. I'm like, that's not the response an unreasonable hospitality company would bring. The unreasonable hospitality is, I'm so sorry, I will have this fixed for you. We're moving you into our best room. Right. And then over the night and the time I'm staying there, the company with unreasonable hospitality is trying to make that experience better than it could have ever been, and investing into me as the guest that's staying there. Right. They're not asking, oh, is the water bothering you? Because if it's not, we're just going to leave it and we'll fix it tomorrow. Like, that's not acceptable. Right. So for me, like, dude, it's so funny. Like, Samantha laughs at me all the time. Like, when we go to restaurants, when we go to hotels, when we stay at short-term rentals, for me, the experience of how are the people showing up right now? What was the intent at the end of the day? What is the intention behind it all? To make my experience a better experience, right? And it's like he talks about in the book. It's like he wants his guests, his people that are coming into his restaurant, feel like they're eating at his home, like they're entering into his home. It's not a transaction. So, like, he talks about it in the book, he removes like the kiosk when you walk into a restaurant and you meet like the person at the door who takes your name and puts it in a thing. They don't even make eye contact with you. He removed all that because he wanted you to feel like you're walking into their home. And he trained his I forget the name of the position, but he trained the front door person to Google the night before, Google every single reservation and find pictures of the people who made a reservation the night before, study their pictures and their names, and greet every single person who walked into the restaurant by their name. Right. So they removed this whole thing, and that's completely unreasonable. right? But like as soon as we walk in for the first time into this restaurant, they're greeting us by name because they did research ahead of time to understand who's coming, and they know me by face, and then they just place me at the table that's ready for me, right? It's like stuff like that that's an art. Um, that's an art, and it's just so freaking beautiful. That's the stuff that's lighting me up right now. Obviously, not easy to do, but it's like you figure that out, you bring the team on, it's you start over delivering on these experiences, then these are the scalability of your company, the success of your company, and just the fun that you can have through that, so much better than just running a place where it's just heads and beds, we'll fix it later type of thing. Like that's a terrible experience. No one's having fun there. Nobody. Right. And it's like, what are we doing? Why are we here? You're not making money. You're not having fun. You're not enjoying the space. Nobody wants to be in your property. Why are you doing this? So, yeah, once you get into unreasonable hospitality, you start nitpicking everything, like everything. I'm like, dude, I was in a restaurant, and the lady, same thing. She wouldn't look me in the eyes as she was checking me out, checking me in, and I'm looking around, and Sam's like, "Oh, look at that! Look at that lamp! That lamp is so cool!" And it was on the desk right next to me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, I just run my finger on it, and there's a whole bunch of dust on top. I'm like, not good, not good hospitality, Like, gotta think of those details. So, I'm getting obsessed with this stuff, man.
So everybody who's listening, if you want some, if you want the best critique of your Airbnb, just invite Eric as a guest.
Yeah, man. I mean, dude, the road trip that we went on, I just gave him notes, right? Like all the places I stayed at, just gave him notes. This is what you guys are doing great. This is where you can improve, all this stuff, because it's it's the feedback that you need. We take it from our guests and we're implementing it into our properties, right? So yeah, maybe we'll start a YouTube channel critiquing Airbnbs.
That'd be a fun job if you can just like travel all around the world, stay at Airbnbs for free, and give them feedback and as a form of payment.
That's right. Let's do it.
Someone's going to pick up on this idea.
I love it.
The critiquing Airbnb guest or something like that YouTube channel. Boom.
Boom.
But I think that's a really good example of unreasonable hospitality. What you mentioned, the example of studying the pictures of the guests that are coming tomorrow. Because the moment you said that, I was like, well, that's really unreasonable. No one's going to expect that. No one's going to expect that.
Dude, that was one of my favorite parts of this book, is when he explained they got to this point where he's like, I want my guests to feel like they're eating at my home. I want to remove anything that feels like a transaction between me and my guests, right? And he's like, the first thing that he hates is like when you show up to a restaurant and you have someone standing there behind a podium. They're being protected. Their eyes are down. They're not even looking at you. They're touching a screen, and then they just send you off, right? It's like that's not unreasonable hospitality. That's not beautiful hospitality. That's a transaction, right? Of like, okay, you're coming in, putting you here, type of thing, right? Excuse me again. So his idea was to like, let's remove that completely and let's have a human interaction. Like when you show up to my home to have dinner, it's like, I'm greeting you with a hug. I'm greeting you by name. I know who you are, right? So how do you do that in a restaurant, right? And he trained his team, and this was, I forget how many years ago, but he trained his team to where the night before they would have a book of all the names, and he would research every single person online, find a picture of them, and study those names. And then anyone new that comes in, they have to find that person and study him. So when they walk in, we know you by face, we know you by name, and we're greeting you as if you're in our home. And then on top of that, anything else in the restaurant that felt like a transactional experience, they removed, right? So it's like at the end of the so before I move on, that whole thing of like training somebody to meet you by name and face, it's like that's not scalable, that's not reasonable, right? That's not something where you get an ROI from, right? You can't measure that. right? But the experience of that guest, especially for the first time walking in, man, that just makes you feel like it makes you feel welcomed. It makes you feel like you want, they want you there, right? And that you can't measure that, in my opinion, right? So, and I'll leave it at that. Like everyone read the book. There's so much in here. I'm probably going to reread this because it was that powerful. So, but I asked myself, it's like, how do we do this in free wild? How do we do this in the short-term rental space? How do we remove the transactional part of this? And the beauty about short-term rentals is like versus traditional hotels is the freedom of guests to have access to the properties, but also the freedom of the operators to have minimal team members on the property, right? So less humans having to manage it, right? So how do we create these unreasonable hospitality experiences this in this industry where 90%, if not 100% of the interactions are through digital connections, right? So there has to be ways that we can do this. And I'm experimenting that with that now, right? Like, one of our guests was asking about the water. Is it safe to drink the tap water? And like, yes, safe. You're fine. It's mountain water. It's very known up there. But then before she checked in, we had a whole bunch of fresh water shipped to the house and put into the refrigerator, right? Turned on the heater because she wanted it a little bit warm. She didn't ask for this stuff, but we went out of our way to do that for her. Stuff like that to me is now how we implement unreasonable hospitality into the short-term rental space.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think this is a conversation that will be continued on another podcast in the next few weeks. But we have a dinner reservation at Campfire, which is it's very cool that we're talking about this, and we're actually going to the restaurant that kind of inspired part of this, right?
Definitely inspired it. Yeah, it inspired the design for Free Wild and inspired the hospitality.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, can you remind us the first book that you recommend? So before we read Unreasonable Hospitality, we should read that other book. What was it called again?
It's called Setting the Table by Danny Meyer.
Awesome.
It's just a good, it's a good introduction to unreasonable hospitality, and all the stories that are behind all the restaurants that are involved in this.
Yeah. And then one last thing, I noticed I really enjoyed reading your posts on LinkedIn, and I see there's a lot of engagement on it. People are commenting, and you're responding and everything. So why don't you let everybody know where they can find those posts? And I'm sure be fun for people to interact with you on these ideas.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm gonna do my best to post up. I'm sorry. Let me restate that. I said that to my trainer the other day that I'm going to do my best to, like show up on time. And he's like, it's either you're doing it or you're not doing it. So, so to correct myself there, I'm going to post a couple of times a week on LinkedIn about this stuff that I'm learning and that what we're implementing in Free Wild. So LinkedIn is now my thing. That's my outlet as of right now. So it's just my full name, Eric D. Moeller on LinkedIn. And you guys will find the comments there, or the posts there.
Yep. And then Moeller is Moeller.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm just reading it I have your name on the screen, so otherwise I wouldn't know. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you jumping on. I know you were a little into the weather, so I appreciate you showing up and delivering the value here. And let's go up to episode 700.
Boom! I love
Next
it, man.
Milestone.
Congrats on the 600 episodes. Freaking awesome. And for anyone who is also interested in more of the unreasonable hospitality stuff, check out the event Dharma. Is it Dharma or Dharm?
No, Dharm. It's DARM.
Yeah, DARM. It's down in Nashville, December 4th, I think it is, or 5th.
5 to 7.
Will, 5 through 7. Will is going to be headlining that event, so you'll be able to see him. We'll be down there as well.
We'll be down there. This is a conference. It's the Data and Revenue Management Conference. So it's definitely going to be my favorite conference. Just nerding out on numbers all day. It's a beautiful thing. I think, by the way, Dharma, I think that's from Lost. You haven't seen Lost, right?
Never seen Lost, no.
For the people who have seen Lost, I think you'll know what this reference is. All right, man. Appreciate you jumping on here, and to the listeners, hope you enjoyed episode 600. You know what to do. Buy these 2 books. Jump on LinkedIn. Start talking to Eric about these concepts, because this is the future, right? So you better hop on the train early, and we'll see you next time.
Adios.